Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you were on a smaller screen like a phone. If you're on a larger screen like a computer, it should be to the right of the video where you can post your questions. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here with Dan A. Says, hey, Q, I'm beginning to hit my irons in woods consistently, but my 8-iron only goes 120 yards and my 3-wood goes 180. Should I accept and play those distances, or would the 20-minute distance fix help me? Well, the 20-minute distance fix would help you, but accepting the distances is really your choice. But if you want to hit the ball farther, which I would recommend doing because it's just a lot easier to play golf when you hit the ball farther. It's not a coincidence that all the top players in the world are a lot of them are the longest hitters, right? Roy McIlroy, Sky Scheffler's a long hitter. They're all long hitters. So it's not a coincidence. It's just a lot easier to play golf when you do that. It's not the only thing, right? But you got one of the things, it sounds like you got one of the things down pretty good, which is hitting those clubs consistently. But if you want to hit them farther, yes, I would recommend doing the 20-minute distance fix. Well, why would the 20-minute distance fix help you? It's because it focuses on the limiting factor, right? Which the limiting factor is club head speed, right? So if we have more club head speed, that's going to allow you to have more ball speed, which is going to allow you to hit it farther. And that's really what the 20-minute distance fix focuses on. For those of you who aren't familiar with what the 20-minute distance fix is, it's a 3-week course that Clay came up with. It's a 3-day-a-week course. 2 of the days you are at the range, and then one of the other days you can do home drills, but you can also do those home drills at the range as well. It's also got some great learning in there. That's one thing I like that Clay does in a lot of his courses is he tries to help you understand why you're doing this and get you in the right mindset. So I believe he calls it the big hitters mindset videos. Highly recommend those as you're going through the program. But basically what we're going to do in the 20-minute distance fix is you're going to do 20 swings and you're going to have a minute between every one. That's why it's called 20-minute distance fix. The reason why you're only doing 20 swings is because well, one, you don't need to do a lot of swings and you don't really want to wear yourself out either. You want to keep your energy up. As you get more accustomed to that, you can do more swings after you've maybe gone through the program a couple times. But in the beginning, if you're just kind of new to speed training, I would stick with the way that it's laid out. So yeah, one of the main things that the first thing you're going to do in there is work on getting a bigger shoulder turn, right? This is also talked about in the Top Speed Golf system in the power turn course. But this is just a drill to get you started. This is really the number one thing that I found that help golfers is just increasing their turn. I find that a lot of golfers can get a bigger turn than what they are now, and that's the reason why it's the number one thing. So getting a bigger turn, using the ground effectively, having a proper weight shift and sequencing. He goes over that in the step drill, the sumo step drill he calls that. Also talking about getting lag, right? So getting this club to lag behind your hands. And then we want to release that lag. That's how we get the speed, right? So lag helps you to store the energy, and then we want to release that lag to release the energy and be able to create more club head speed. So there's several drills for that. So yeah, check out the course if you want to check out this awesome course. A lot of the members have given us awesome feedback, telling us that they've been hitting the ball farther and stuff like that. So if you want to check it out, click the instruction tab at the top of the screen. Then you can click the 20-minute distance fix from there. Get started on those drills. At the very least, I would do the quick start video. There's a video in there that's just kind of, it's basically like you kind of run through a small portion of a lot of the drills that kind of give you an idea of what the program is about. And a lot of people, just by going through that, gain some club head speed by going through that. Now, if you want that lasting speed, that speed that's going to stick around, you got to work through the course, but you can kind of see what the course is all about by working through the quick start. So do me a favor, at the very least, work through that quick start if you're interested in gaining more distance. Like I said, you can click the instruction tab at the top and then go to the 20-minute distance fix from the drop down there. All right, keep the questions coming here. All right, so Mark says, Q, right-handed player. Pulling my shots, both irons and woods. What causes a pull? How to stop pulling? Don't pull on the range, just on the course. Thank you. Yeah. So let's talk about what causes a pull. What's happening at impact to cause a pull? So what we're going to do is we're going to put this alignment stick down, and this alignment stick is going to represent our target line, right? So if we have the ball on that target line, when you hit a pull, what's happening is your club is working from outside the target line to inside the target line through impact, right? So it's kind of working through impact like this. And then your club face, right, is also in the direction that that club is moving. So let's say if we want to put numbers on it, let's say that your club is working 4 degrees to the left of the target as it's coming through contact. That's the movement of the club, aka the club path, right? That's the technical term for it. And then the club face, the face angle, is also 4 degrees close to that target line. That's going to produce a pull that's going to go 4 degrees left of the target, right? So how do we fix that? Well, we need to feel like we are swinging from inside the target line to outside the target line. Now, that's easier said than done. There's a lot of reasons why people tend to have trouble with that. They can feel like they're doing it and they're not really doing it. One of those reasons is because the club face is open. So if we have the club face open when we're coming down, and then we swing from inside the target line to outside the target line, what's going to happen is you're just going to hit a big push slice. So a lot of people will swing from inside the target or outside the target line to inside the target line, swing over the top and to the left to get the club face to point more in the direction of the target. So if you're struggling with pulling the ball, what I recommend doing is working through the 20-minute shallowing fix because that's going to go through basically all the things that help you to shallow out the club and get this club working a little bit more from the inside. Basically teaches you how to hit a hook, and then you tone it down to get a draw, or you can even tone it down to get a fade. But we got to get that ball starting to the right and hooking first. And once you're able to do that, you can tone that down. So that's what the 20-minute shallowing fix is all about. It's going to get you kind of to do this a little bit more to the extreme from the in to out. And then you can tone it down from there to get rid of the pulls. All right. So to get to the 20-minute shallowing fix, you can click the instruction tab at the top, and then you can click the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. And this is, a lot of times, this is just like a 1 or maybe 2 range session thing. It's not something that's like a several week program like some of the other things. It's usually something you can work out with a bucket of balls if you're diligent about it, right? So why does this happen on the range and not, or why does it happen on the course and not on the range? So there's several reasons for this. It's hard to say for sure without actually witnessing it, but some of it may be alignment, right? When you're on the range, maybe you don't have a stick on the ground and you don't really know where you're hitting it, so you don't know if you're pulling it or not, right? So whenever I'm not saying that this is what you're doing, Mark. I'm just coming up with reasons why I see people do this. But when you go to the range, what I would always do is I put a club or a alignment stick on the ground, point it at a target, and so that way you can gain some target awareness, right? So I know, okay, my feet are lined up with the stick. I know that I'm lined up with the target. And if I'm hitting it left of the target, I know that I'm pulling it relative to my toe line. Or if I hit it right of the target, I know that I'm pushing it or whatever it might be, right? So have some target awareness, and then when you're on the course, I would make sure that your alignment is good as well. Maybe ask a buddy like, hey, where am I aligned? Because you might be lining up, to the left, basically, and then just hitting it straight. And then your brain is saying, oh, I'm pulling the ball, when in reality, you're hitting it in the direction of your alignment. You're just not lined up very well, right? So yeah, if you're just out there playing by yourself or something like that, you can get lined up and then take your club, put it down on your feet, and then get behind it and kind of see where you're lining up. Because if you're playing by yourself, you're just playing for fun. You're not playing for handicap, or it's just kind of like for practice. That maybe be something I would do as well. You might find that you're lining up to the left all the time, and you need to work a little bit more on your target awareness or whatever that might be, right? So that would be another one reason for that. Another reason, and this is one that not a lot of people think about, is a lot of ranges are mats, right? And when we hit off of mats, you can get away with hitting behind the ball, right? But when you go out and play on the course, you can't get away with hitting behind the ball. So why does that? What does that have to do with anything? Well, what we have to understand, remember, what causes a pull is your club path going out to in, right? Your club path is going from outside the target line to inside the target line, and your club face is in line with that path. So if I'm on the range and I'm hitting it perfectly straight, well, what might be happening is I might be hitting way behind the ball, right? And in order to get my club to hit more where the ball is, I might swing out to in to make that happen because it moves my ground contact more toward the target. Think about it this way. If I'm standing at home plate here, right, and let's say this is alignment six pointed right towards second base. Well, now imagine I swing in the direction of first base. What's going to happen, right? Well, what's going to happen is my club is going to bottom out more back here by my trail foot. Now imagine I swing the club in the direction of third base. What's going to happen now is my club is going to bottom out more in the direction of my lead foot, right? So what might be happening is you're on the range and you're swinging nicely on plane, you're aligned up and everything, but the reality is that you might be hitting 2 or 3 inches behind the ball. And then when you get out on the course, your subconscious knows, hey, I got to make ball first contact. So what you might do to help you to get the ground contact to be more where the ball is instead of behind the ball is you might come over the top to make that happen, right? So what you want to make sure of is that we're getting a good weight shift to our lead side, and we're also swinging from the inside. So that way we're also able to make good ball first contact while we are swinging from the inside. So that's also something I would look at, not something a lot of people think about, but that would be something I could see, a lot of people, because I've had that phenomenon myself, right? Every now and then I struggle with coming down a little bit steep, and I'll go to the range, I'll hit on mats, I'll hit great on the mats, right? And then I'll go to the course or I'll go to hit some little pitch shots on the grassy area. And then all of a sudden I'm finding that I'm pulling it a little bit. And then I realize, well, I'm doing that because I'm trying to make ball first contact, because if I swing the way that I normally would, I would probably hit behind the ball. So you got to focus on getting that good weight shift to the lead side, and then also swinging that club from the inside, right? So, but yeah, I'd highly recommend checking out the 20-minute shallowing fix. Check your alignment. Look at your swing on video as well. Like I said, it could be a little bit of alignment thing. One quick thing on alignment, if it is an alignment thing on the course, what I would recommend doing is using an intermediate target to line up your shots, because if you're lining up shots that are, to a target that's way off in the distance, 150 plus yards away, it's hard to line up with something that's so far away. So what you can do is you can get behind the ball here, and I like to use my club and kind of hold it up like this and see, okay, what's in line with my target and the ball here. And I'll pick a spot, a foot or two in front of my ball along my target line. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here. I'm just going to line up my face to that. Then I'm going to line up my stance to my face. And now I'm all nice and lined up. So that would be one thing I would recommend doing if it is an alignment issue. All right. Let's keep going here. No problem, Mark. Glad to help. All right. So Mike B says, hi, Q. Technical question on the downswing. You come into contact with the ball. Am I trying to get my shoulders, upper torso to bring the club to the ball? And my arms should just go along for the ride. Also, should my trail elbow be tucked into my right side? So technically, what you're talking about might be more of a feel and not really the reality of what's going on. Technically, what's happening is your rotations bringing the club to the ball, and then also your arms and your wrists. There's lots of things bringing the club to the ball, right? Because if I'm at the top of the swing, and let's say I'm in my transition here, lead arm parallel on the downswing, and I have all this lag, right? Well, I have to let go of this lag. This has to bring the club to the ball some amount, right? If I'm here and I don't change my relationship of my arms to my body, it's going to be very hard for me to get the club to the ball. So my arms have to come down to get the club to the ball. Also, my arms have to rotate to get the club to the ball, right? Because if I stay here, right, my arms not rotate, I'm just going to leave the face wide open. Everything's going to go out to the right, right? And the club's not going to get to the ball. So there's lots of things that bring the club to the ball. Your wrists are bringing the club to the ball. Your arms are bringing the club to the ball. The rotation of your body's bringing the club to the ball, right? Your hips, everything's bringing the club to the ball. Your lateral movement is bringing the club to the ball, right? All these things are doing their part to bring the club to the ball. Now, what you're talking about may or may not be a good feeling. Feelings are relative to the golfer on what helps them. If you're someone who has a swing where you really have a hard time turning your body through. So let's say you're at the top of the swing and you're here, right? And then there's not a lot of body rotation. It's just all arms and wrists, right? You have a swing that kind of looks like that. Well, it might be a good feel for you, not necessarily the reality of what's going to happen, right? But it might be a good feel for you to feel like, okay, my wrists and my arms are going to do nothing to bring the club to the ball. It's just going to be the rotation of my chest and my body. That could be a good feeling for a lot of golfers, but that's not ever going to be the reality of what actually happens. So that's the way I would kind of look at it. It's really a feel and not the reality of what's happening. And then, sorry, I'm looking at the second question here. It says, should my trail elbow be tucked into my right side? Yeah, generally it's a good place for it to be, for it to kind of come in and be close. It doesn't have to be like stitched to your side or anything like that. But generally what we like to see is that the trail shoulder stay externally rotated. So basically you're losing the arm wrestling contest, right? So I'm externally rotated as I'm coming down. That's going to get my elbow to be more kind of leading the way. Because if I'm like this, right, if my shoulder is internally rotated, so I'm winning the arm wrestling contest, look what that's going to do to the club, right? That's going to get that club kind of steep, right? So I don't really want that to happen until I'm like coming through contact. So as I'm coming down, I want to have my shoulder externally rotated, and then my lead arm, or my trail arm, kind of working toward my side. Now, some players, it may get right in there and be touching and be really locked in there. Some players, it might not even get touching you, right? But it might be in close quarters because that elbow's getting in the right position, right? So yeah, generally that is a good place to be. Clay talks about this in the 20-minute shallowing fix. He kind of walks you through that protocol where we're chopping the wood straight down, right? So again, I'm driving with my elbows straight down. If you've ever seen anyone chop wood, I've never seen anyone cast the axe. I've never seen anyone do this, right? Everyone's got lag, right? They're leading with the elbows, they got lag, and then they release that lag for lots of power, right? That's the feeling that you want to have in the golf swing, right? So if I'm chopping wood, right, I want to take that feeling, and then I want to go to chopping at a tree. So if I'm chopping at a tree, now I'm chopping something that's in front of me. Well, now look, right? Now I'm leading with my elbows. My elbow is tucked, right? I got all that lag, and I'm going to release that lag, right? Well, now what I want to feel like is I'm chopping down toward the ball, right? Same thing, chopping down toward the ball, right? And then from there, I can take that club and loosen my grip, square up the club face, and now that's that feeling that I want to have as I'm coming into contact, right? So yeah, that's a great feeling to have to get you into a good contact position. If you're struggling with shallowing out the club, you're struggling with good ball flight, you're hitting slices and things like that, I think that's a really great sequence to work through. And that's a sequence that Clay works through in the 20-minute shallowing fix. So if you want to check that out, click the instruction tab at the top, and then from the drop down, you can click the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. All right, so Paul C says, I really struggle to hit from the inside. Would it not be helpful to set up with my hips and shoulders a little close to the target? I understand you need to close the face a little also. Yeah, it can definitely help so let's say this is my target line, right? This stick on the ground. It can definitely help to swing that club more from the inside. If you were to close off your stance. I'm just not a big fan of it. The reason is that if I close off my stance, right, well, then that makes it more difficult for me to get through the ball, to turn through the ball, right? And I don't want to do that, right? I want to be able to turn through the ball. The one club I would say where I don't mind it the most would be with the driver, right? The reason is that it's okay if my body doesn't, rotate and get really open with my driver as much as it is with irons. It's more important with the irons, right? So for the driver, I don't mind it one bit because it can definitely help you to swing from the inside and hit more up on the ball. I wouldn't go too excessive with it because imagine this. Imagine I set up like this, right? That's my target line. My target's going that way, right? This is extremely closed off. Imagine trying to hit a ball like this. Your body is really going to stall out and you're not going to be able to hit it very well. Well, that's going to happen to a certain extent, even if you're kind of set up like this. So most golfers tend to have an issue with getting the body to open up as they're coming into contact already. It's already an issue, right? So if you close off your body, you're just going to make that even more difficult of an issue. Now, why is that even an issue? Well, it can be an issue because if your body stalls, then that club is going to tend to want to release, right? So if I have my body really closed off like this and I can't keep rotating open, well, then my club is going to want to release. That's a problem with an iron because I'm going to tend to hit the ground behind the ball. I'm going to tend to early release and add loft and hit weaker shots. Now with a driver, because the ball position is more forward anyway, and we want to hit up on it, right? It's not as big of a problem. And it can also help you to turn away from the ball a little bit more to get a little bit more power. So for the driver, I don't mind closing off a little bit, but for irons, I like to see a more square stance. So that way we get the best of both worlds. We're able to turn away from the ball a certain amount, and we're able to turn through the ball a certain amount. So if you're struggling with shallowing out the club with irons, then what I would recommend doing is working through the 20-minute shallowing fix. You mentioned you understand that you need to get the club face closed. Yes, that's absolutely one thing that you're likely going to need to do if you struggle with shallowing out the club. That's the first thing that Clay talks about in the 20-minute shallowing fix. So go check that out. Click the instruction tab and click the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. But if we're able to keep the stance pretty square, then that's going to make it to where, okay, I need to be able to shallow out the club from that square position, and I need to be able to turn through the ball through that square position. Now you might be thinking, well, why don't I just get open with my body with my iron so that way I can really turn through it? Well, that's going to limit how much you can turn away in the backswing, right? So that's why I'm not a huge. There are circumstances where it's better to have kind of a closed or open stance. One, like I said, closed stance. If you're trying to hit a draw with the driver and you're trying to hit it as hard as you can, I don't mind a little bit of a closed stance. Helps you to turn away from the ball, helps you to swing a little bit more from the inside, right? For an open stance, where I don't mind an open stance would be like a pitch shot, like a shorter pitch shot where you don't need to take like a full swing. I like that because I don't need to turn away so much because I'm not trying to get as much power, but it's going to make it easier for me to keep things moving and going through contact. And one thing that we want with the wedges is we want shaft lean, because the best players in the world tend to get a lot of shaft lean with their driver or with their wedges, so that way they can flight it low and have lots of control with it. And Clay actually talks about this with the blue brick. If you're not familiar, this is the blue brick, the training aid that Clay invented. It's his first training aid. Really, really awesome tool. It's basically just like a box with a lot of holes in it where you can put alignment sticks into at different angles and things like that to do all kinds of cool drills. And one of them is a wedge impact drill, right? So you can see right there, it's labeled wedge impact drill, right? So what you do is you set this up. Make sure you can see that. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in here. And what that's given me here, and I'll use the so the sticks that it comes with are a little bit shorter, which is nice. These are like the ones that you would get at like Home Depot, which I like longer ones for certain things, but for this I like the shorter ones. So it comes with these alignment sticks. These ones are awesome, by the way, because they're collapsible. They got a little neon string in there, so you can see how I can kind of collapse it down, and I can just throw that in my bag and in the side pocket. I don't have to worry about putting them in my clubs and then scratching up my clubs and things like that. So then they go together just like that, and they just kind of stay together because there's elastic inside there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to put that into the wedge slot there. And now this gives me an idea of how much shaft lean I need to have, right, for a wedge. This is where the pros are at. So if I put a ball kind of even with this, right, now you can kind of see, okay, when I'm coming into contact, I want my shaft lean to kind of match that. That's where I want to be with a wedge, right? So if I set up a little bit more open here, right, it makes it a little bit easier for me to get my hands a little bit more in front. Whereas if you imagine if I was closed off like this, it's going to be very difficult for me to get my hands in front of that because my body is in the way. It's not turning out of the way. Whereas if I'm here, if I'm a little bit more open, man, it's a lot easier to get my hands in front because my body is able to open up more, right? And if I only need to bring the club back to about right here to hit a little pitch shot, I don't need to have my stance super close. It makes it easy or square. Makes it easier to have it open so I can kind of keep everything moving through contact. So if you want to check out the Blue Brick, highly recommend it. Awesome training aid. I think we got them back in stock. I don't know when you're going to be watching this video. If you're watching it after the fact, you know, in office hours or whatever. But yeah, if you want to find one, go to the resources tab on the website, resources tab on the website, and then on the resources tab, if you scroll down, you'll see a list of all the training aids that we recommend. This is at the top of the list for the training aids that we recommend. So you click on that and you can either purchase one or, you know, there might be a waiting list to when we get more in stock. But yeah, check that out. There's lots of other things you can do with it. If you have more questions about the Blue Brick, let me know. I'll be happy to answer any of them. All right. So Paul C says, does the Blue Brick work for lefties? Yes, there's only one, what I just talked about, the wedge thing. It's the only thing that doesn't really work for lefties where it's different, but everything else works for lefties. So let me talk about what's on here what we can do with it. There's lots of drills you can do with it, but one of the main one here is for shallowing. So if you look here, we have 3 different slots here, right? We have our driver, we got our 6-iron, and we got our wedge slot. And the reason why we have different slots is because clubs are different lengths and different lie angles, right? So now the wedge and the 6-iron are actually really close to each other, but I can show you the difference between the driver and the 6-iron. So if we look here, there's the driver, right? So because it's a longer club and you're farther away, right, it's going to be a little bit flatter, right? And then if we look at a 6-iron, there's the 6-iron, right? So 6-iron is going to be a little bit closer. I'm going to be more like here with the 6-iron. So this kind of shows you this basically be the drill. You place the ball, you know, up in here. But this works whether you're a lefty or a righty. If I'm a lefty, I can just turn this around, right? You can turn this around and do it from this side, right? So that's one drill. But if you look here, if I put the wedge in there from the lefty, right, it would be the opposite. So we might be coming out with a new version at some point, and I've already brought that up to Clay because I had somebody come on here who was a lefty and said that was the only thing that he couldn't really do, but gives you a good idea of what you need to do. Let's see here. Another one you can do is to swing from the inside. So if you put it in this one, right? You put it in that one, and it's all labeled, so you don't have to guess. It says inside swing. You can put it there, and then you put the ball right underneath the stick, and then if you come over the top, you'll hit the stick. You got to swing from the inside to avoid the stick and hit the ball. Another one is the square divots and angle of attack, right? So basically, you put it in there, put it in there, and then you put another. It also comes with 2 alignment sticks, which is nice. So you can see how it sets that up square, and then you can see if you're getting nice square divots as you're coming down, and then also it's angled down, so you can kind of get that feeling of kind of that downward angle of attack into the ball, right? So that's another one that you can do. This is also a cool one. So if you're the lefty, right? Because I mean, all this is really doing on here is it's giving you a visual, right? It's giving you a visual for, okay, this is where my hands need to be, right? It's giving you that visual there. It's not actually training you to do anything. It's just giving you a good visual, like, okay, this is where my hands, the shaft needs to be leaning this far forward. This is how far forward the pros have the shaft leaning forward, right? So, but if you're a lefty, right, if I put it in this slot here, which is just basically holds the alignment stick straight up and down, right? Well, now what I'm going to do, I can't remember the exact distance that it's supposed to go away from you, but basically you put that a set distance away from you, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wedge and I'm going to hit shots, and what I want to do is I want that to be below that. So if I'm coming through, I want my, let's say that there was another stick that went along across here, right? I would want my balls to go underneath that, right? Because that's going to tell me that I'm launching it at the correct angle. Tour players are going to launch their wedges under 30 degrees, right? So the top of this stick from a certain distance, again, I can't remember the distance, is 30 degrees. If I'm hitting it, if it's going above the tip of the stick, I know that I'm more than 30 degrees. If it's going below, I know that I'm below 30 degrees, right? Now, the cool part is that it comes with lots of drills, right? So you're not just getting the box in the sticks, right? There's a QR code on here. You scan that QR code with your phone, and you'll get the page. It'll take you to the page with all the drills on there that you can do with it. And one of them is that one. So it'll tell you in there. I probably need to go look at that to so I know exactly how far it needs to be. But you can get the drills that tell you how far, and then you can work on your launch angle. And in the box, it comes with this this card with the QR code on there as well. So if for some reason it's not working on there, you can use the card as well. But yeah, works well for those as well. All right. So Mark says, Clay talked about rotating wrists like a motorcycle. Please discuss, especially for the driver swing. Thank you. Well, it's not really going to be any different for any other swing. It's the same. It's just squaring up the face is all it is. So it's basically just moving your lead wrist into flexion is what that is. So that's kind of like a motorcycle move. Well, look at the club face when I do that. See how the club face closes, right? The other thing that can do is it can help you to shallow out the club, right? So if I do that, if I bow my wrist, that can help me to shallow out the club. That's why you see a lot of players do it. So the good part is that you don't have to do this. It's a thing that you can do to help you to square up the face and shallow out the club, but it's a difficult thing to do. So that's why we generally recommend that most people just use a stronger grip and more neutral wrist angles because it's a lot easier to do. But hey, if the motorcycle move is easy for you to do and you're able to get lots of speed with it, then by all means do that. It's just not that easy to do because it's harder to get speed when you do that. And the reason is if you were to make a fist, right? Make a fist with your lead hand, clinch that fist, try to ball up that fist as hard as you possibly can, right? Well, when you do that, naturally, you're going to have your wrist in a pretty flat angle, right? Pretty neutral wrist angle, right? Well, now take that balled up fist and try to bow your wrist. It's not easy to do. My hand wants to open up when I do that, right? So if you bow your wrist a lot, it's harder to put force into the handle, and that's directly proportional to how much speed you can generate. Because if you can't put enough force into the handle, you're not going to be able to hold on to the club. It's going to want to come out of your hands. So instinctually, you're going to swing slower, so that way the club isn't flying out of your hands, right? So that's why I generally recommend just using a stronger grip and more neutral wrist angles, because that's going to help you to get that club face in a good position, and then also be able to swing with lots of speed, because with your wrist in a more neutral position, it's going to help you to be able to hold on to that club with more force, right? But like I said, if you're someone who can swing with tons of speed and bow the wrist, and you like to have kind of a weaker grip, then by all means do that. But it's just a way to control the face and to shallow out the club a little bit. All right, so Calbert says, if I miss a live office hours, where do I find the day's recorded episode? Yes, so if you ever miss an office hours and you want to see the replay of the office hours, all you have to do is go to the office hours highlights page and then scroll to the bottom, and you will see the playlist, the YouTube playlist for, I think it's like the last 500 episodes you can go and watch. So to get to that, you can go to the top of the screen, go to the instruction tab, and then from the drop down there, you'll select the office hours highlights page, and then scroll to the bottom of that office hours highlights page, and you'll find the playlist for any office hours that you missed. So JG says, for online lessons, does it matter which smartphone you use to record your swing? Sorry, I mean which operating system, Android or iPhone? No, so what we use for the online lessons is we use an app called OnForm, and they have an Android app, and they also have an iPhone app. Now, in full disclosure here, the iPhone app is better. It has more functionality. It works better. I'm an Android user myself. I don't do the lessons on my Android phone because I can't, because it doesn't have that functionality. I do all the lessons on on my iPad here. Yeah, if you have an iPad, you can use that as well. But you can certainly record your swing and send videos and receive the lessons and all that stuff from an Android phone. It just doesn't have all the features and things like that that the Apple apps have. But you can absolutely use it. Yes. Don't let that be a deterrent. It's kind of what I'm saying. Like I said, I'm an Android user. I record and send videos, on the iPhone, or excuse me, on my Android phone, and it works just fine. It just doesn't have as much functionality as the other one. So Anthony A says, can the blue brick drills be obtained online without using the QR code? I don't think so. I think you have to buy the brick to get the drills. That's kind of part of the thing. So Billy W says, I am a 27 handicap and consistently improving thanks to TSG. My clubs are 12 years old. Would new clubs with new technology be a benefit to me at this point with a changing, improving swing? And do I need a fitting, or would off the rack clubs be an improvement? Thanks for your thoughts. I mean, clubs could certainly help, and then a fitting would be better. But I don't know for sure if that's really going to make much of a difference. It really just depends. If your clubs are like really far off, and maybe the clubs that you have are not good quality, and they're stuff like that. It really just depends. The only way to really know is to get professionally fitted, and you can see the difference for yourself. A place that I recommend is a place called Club Champion. I am not an affiliate of Club Champion. I've been there myself. But what they're going to do is they're going to get you on TrackMan, and you're going to bring in your old clubs. You're going to hit your old clubs, and then they're going to kind of like build some clubs for you, with their fitting system, right? And they'll give you a few different things and see how you hit those, and then you'll be able to see, okay, this is how I hit my club, and this is how I hit the club that you hit, and you can see if there's actually a difference there. You may find that there's no difference, right? You may find, well, my clubs are just fine. I hit these just as well as those. That might be the case. I would say for a higher handicap, being at a 27 handicap, it's more likely for that to be the case. But You just don't know until you really get in there, right? And the other thing about Club Champion is you don't have to buy clubs. You can go and you can go through a fitting process, and if you find, now you got to pay for the fitting, right? But if you find like, hey, I hit my clubs just as, my 12-year-old clubs just as good as the clubs that you built for me. There's no pressure. Like, you don't have to buy the clubs or anything from them. Even if you got fitted for clubs there, you don't have to buy the clubs from there. You could, just have them give you the specs, and you can go find used ones or something like that fit the specs and maybe save a little bit of money, right? If you go in there and tell them like, hey, I'm on a budget, I'm just paying for the fitted, I'm not going to buy the clubs from you guys, I just want to see if fitted clubs are going to help me. It's probably, I don't know how much it would cost, probably like $100 or something. Depends on what you do. If you do like a whole bag fitting or something like that, it'll be considerably more. But I mean, I got a putter fitting from there, and I think it was like $100 for the putter fitting. I will say, with the holidays coming up, I know in the past, I know that they've done like Black Friday deals where the fitting, they have a much cheaper price on the fitting. But if you just go in there and tell them like, hey, I'm on a budget, I'm just looking to see if new clubs will help me. I can't afford like a whole brand new set of clubs. I'm going to have to buy used, but I just want to get the specs for what I need. And then what you can do is you can go on used clubs websites, and you can go in there and see if they have the clubs that fit the specs that you're looking for. And then you can order those. That'd be kind of like a way to do it to save a little bit of money. What if I will say is, if you go there and you do want to buy the clubs from them, I would probably turn down some of the upsell stuff. You don't need, shafts that cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars, especially if you're a higher handicap, just because it's just not that big of a difference. The more expensive shafts are better, but they're just like marginally better, right? So, you don't necessarily need to do that. The puring of the shafts, I wouldn't do that, right? Any of that stuff, because it's just more upsell stuff that they're doing. But some people want that stuff, so they got to provide it, right? So I don't blame them for providing it, because there's some people that want it because they know it's a thing, right? And they're going to ask you if you want it. But if it was me, I would turn it down, because it's just not going to make that big of a difference. All right, let's keep going here. We got 15 minutes or so left. If we got any more questions. All right, plenty of time left here. About 15 minutes. If we got any more questions? So Mark Q says, I use too much wrist in the putting stroke. Please discuss how to fix things. Yeah, so basically, I would just make sure that your grip is kind of in a place that allows you to do that. All right, so what I like to do is have the elbows kind of tucked in like this, because if we have our elbows out, we're going to tend to want to use more wrist. So what we want to do is have those elbows kind of tucked in and feel like our hands are more underneath the grip. And the feeling that we want to have here is if we tuck our elbows in, if you put your hands kind of side by side like this, now what I want you to do is I just want you to rock your shoulders. That's what we want the putting stroke to be like, right? So I want to hold the putter like I'm doing this, right? So my elbows are going to be tucked more in. I'm going to have my hands more underneath, right? And then that gets me to where I can more easily, I'm going to keep my wrists nice and solid here. And I'm going to feel like I'm just rocking my shoulders. And that's what's swinging this putter back and forth, right? So I'm not doing any of this, right? I have my elbows kind of locked in like underneath here. I got my hands more underneath, right? And I'm going to keep my wrists nice and solid, and I'm just going to swing that putter with my shoulders, right? So that's how I would recommend working on that. Just have the proper setup, and it'll make it a lot easier. And that's not to say you can't be a good putter using your wrist. You certainly can. It's just that typically when you look at the best putters, you're not going to see that, especially on faster greens. If you play slower greens, it may not be too big of a deal because you need to give that ball a little extra oomph. But on faster greens, you're generally not going to see that. All right, we got a few minutes left. If anybody has any more questions. So Brent says, is it better to have a flat or a bowed wrist at the top? Well, neither one of them is necessarily better than the other. It's just about your matchups, right? So generally, if you have a weak grip, a bowed wrist is going to be better because it's going to get that club face more square. If you have a weak grip and you have a flat to cup wrist at the top, generally that face is going to be more open. So if you look here, weak grip, right? Then if I go up to the top, let's say I have a little bit of a cupped wrist. So you can see how that club face is pointing. Let me move over here. You can see how that club face is pointing more that way, right? So it's open, right? So as I'm coming down, it's going to be hard to get that club face back to square without kind of coming over the top or standing up and really flipping or doing both, right? So if I have a flat wrist, I want to have my wrist or if I have a weak grip, I generally want to have my wrist a little bit more bowed. So that way I can have that club face more in a square position as I'm coming down, and I won't have to come over the top to get that club face to point more to the left, or early release to get the club face to point more toward the target, right? Because releasing the club early, that's a way to get the club face more closed, right? So golfers that have bowed wrists generally are going to have a weak grip at the top. So like Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, John Rahm, these are all golfers that have weak grips and bow their wrist, right? Flat wrist is generally going to go with more of a neutral grip, right? So more of a neutral grip. If I were to go up to the top and really bow my wrist with a neutral grip, the face might get too closed, right? And now I'm going to hook everything, right? And if I have a neutral wrist and I cut my wrist, well, it's still going to get too open generally. So generally, a neutral grip is going to have more of a flat wrist. So these are going to be golfers like Tiger, Adam Scott. Those are neutral grip players that have basically flat lead wrist at the top of the swing. Now, if you're someone who has a strong grip, right, a flat to a little bit cupped wrist is generally going to be a good place to be. So golfers with it'd be like Matt Fitzpatrick, Brandon Steele. These are strong grip players. If you look at them at the top of the swing, they'll have a little bit of cup in their wrist at the top of the swing. But if they were to flatten the wrist or bow the wrist, generally that club face is going to get too close. They're going to hook everything, right? So it's not whether one is better than the other. It's really relative to the golfer and the grip that they choose to use. Generally, what I recommend doing is to use the grip strength, right? So whether you're weak, neutral, or strong, use the grip strength that matches the wrist angles that you naturally produce, right? So if you look at your swing and you have a flat wrist, you're probably going to be better off having, if that's what you naturally do, you're probably going to be better off having a flatter, a more neutral grip, right? If you're someone who has a cupped wrist at the top, then you're probably going to be better off having a stronger grip. Now, if you have a really strong grip and you cup your wrist a ton, you may still need to get that wrist, less cupped to get the club face in a better position. But if you have a cupped wrist, I definitely recommend using a stronger grip because it's just going to make life a lot easier for you. Now, if you're someone who naturally has a bowed wrist at the top, then generally a weaker grip is going to be better for you. Because if you were to have a strong grip or a neutral grip with a bowed wrist, the club face is likely going to get too close and you're going to tend to hook everything. So it's not that one is better than the other. It's really about how everything kind of matches up and works the best for you. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up from there. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow will be the last office hours of the week. Just a reminder, we will not have office hours Thursday and Friday. I'll be out of town, but we'll be back to the full schedule the week after that. But then we'll have Labor Day the week after that, so we won't have Monday. So anyway, we'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.